Hi, welcome back to the Weekly Wine. This week we have parsha Pinchas, and it's very interesting. Pinchas, famous story. He actually, that happened at the end of last parsha, but he sees as a Jewish man. He sees the head of the tribe of Shimon, one very prominent Israelite, very publicly sleeping with his Midianite woman. They're really making a spectacle of it, and he takes a spear and he makes a shish kebab out of the two people. That's at the end of last week's parsha, and he's called a zealot. Zealot, of course, in terms of a Torah description, that's a whole other issue, what exactly a zealot is. But long story short, a zealot is somebody who does something totally and completely selflessly. In other words, if Pinchas had gone to a court and asked, "Can I please have permission to kill Zimri, this man who's sleeping with this Midianite woman?" they would have said no. And if he had still done it, he would have been guilty of murder. If Pinchas had stopped for 1 second and said, "You know what, I also don't like Zimri for other reasons, and you know what, this is just a nice reason to be able to kill him," he would be guilty of murder. So the whole idea of the reason that he is praised for doing what he did is that it was completely and totally, utterly devoid of any additional thoughts, any views, any prejudices. It was totally and completely l'shem shamayim, totally in the sake of heaven. That's another issue. But what Rashi says here is that the entire connection of Pinchas is about peace. In fact, right at the beginning of the parsha, not once but twice, we are told that Pinchas is the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the Kohen. Not once but twice. Chapter 25, verse 7, and then chapter 25, verse 10. The question is, why is it repeated only 3 verses later? Rashi says that God wants to emphasize that Pinchas is the descendant of Aaron, the grandson of Aaron. Aaron, of course, known as, very popularly in Pirkei Avot, as a lover of peace and a pursuer of peace. Aaron, his grandfather, who was Moses' brother, he was known as a pursuer of peace. That's what Aaron was. And so God is making a very explicit statement here that Pinchas, this guy who murdered, or should I say killed, murder has a value judgment, he killed brutally 2 people. This guy is given a blessing of peace, and he is very intentionally connected to his grandfather, who was known as peace. Why? The whole idea is that because of these sins of what Zimri was doing, this Israelite who was sleeping with the Midianite woman, it wasn't just a private act of passion or lust, it was an act of trying to encourage all the other Israelites to sin. But the whole idea really was that because of this sin, it was causing thousands and thousands of the Israelites to die of this horrible plague. And so at Pinchas, his only concern was saving the Jewish people. His only concern was to stop this plague. It's akin to if somebody, went and tried to assassinate Hitler. "Oh, you're committing a terrible, violent act." Well, in a sense, well, yes, I might be pulling a trigger or planting a bomb, but I'm doing it for the greater good. I'm doing it to save lives here. That's the idea with Pinchas. Pinchas, he had complete singular mindset, not to achieve glory, only to stop the plague. And that's the reason that he's connected to his grandfather Aaron. Ultimately, if we're going to think of Pinchas, it's about peace, it's not about violence. And I think that the whole idea that he's connected to Aaron, not only, to show that this is his connection to peace, but the idea is that he came from this kind of lineage. And I think that for so many of us, whether we have that biological lineage or we have that lineage chosen, it's very important to find people who we can emulate ourselves after, to find role models, whether they are our biological ancestors or whether they are, role models we've taken upon ourselves, whether we are converts or newly observant, whatever they are. We need to, like Pinchas, connect ourselves to previous generations and people who really inspire us and people we know are on the same page. And that's why Pinchas has such an illustrious history, because here's a guy who completely put his own safety totally on the back burner. In other words, if a court had found him guilty, he knew he was putting his life in danger by killing Zimri, this man. But ultimately, his only concern was an issue of peace, was to stop the violence and stop the death that was affecting the entire Jewish people. And so the lesson for us, of course, is to try to, like Pinchas, first of all, have that kind of single-minded goal of, concerning of our fellow man, our fellow Jews. That itself is something. But not only that, but to try to look back and to try to connect ourselves to previous generations, and even to people we know and to try to build something off that and take something from our role model. So that's Parshat Pinchas. Best wishes, Shabbat Shalom, God bless.